Chloe, this time I've got a story from a rural Korean village in the 1960s that is so bizarre and creepy you have to hear it. It's about the sister-in-law who returned from the grave. The story begins on the day of a family's first memorial rite for their deceased grandmother. The whole family was gathered, preparing food for the ceremony. The eldest son, Song-chun, was in the backyard cleaning the ritual vessels, and his wife, a woman named Gilja, was busy making the sticky rice cakes for the offering. The whole house was filled with a very solemn and respectful atmosphere. Well, everyone except for one person, the second son of the family, Yeong-do, a notorious good-for-nothing gambler. While his family was busy with the memorial preparations, he was off with the local thugs playing a round of hwatu, a Korean card game, and apparently he was on a winning streak. His nephew came to tell him his grandfather was furious and that he needed to come home, but he just yelled back, annoyed that his lucky streak was being interrupted. It wasn't until the son had said that he finally, reluctantly, dragged himself home. The second he walked in, his father started yelling. He started scolding the older brother, Song-chun, for not controlling his useless younger brother. That's when Yeong-do snapped back at his father, screaming about how he'd always favored the older brother and had never done anything for him, right in front of the memorial table. A quiet, sacred day instantly turned into a horrible screaming match. And that's when it happened. The sister-in-law, Gilja, who was outside tasting one of the sticky rice cakes, heard the shouting from inside and rushed in, startled. In her haste, the piece of rice cake she was eating got lodged in her throat. She collapsed right there, unable to breathe, making a horrible choking sound. They called for a traditional doctor, but it was too late. Her airway was completely blocked. In the end, she died a pointless, tragic death, all because of a single piece of sticky rice cake. There was an old custom back then that if a young person died, they were often buried the very same day. And since the grandmother's important memorial rite was the next day, the family, without even a moment to properly grieve, had no choice but to rush through her funeral that very night. Chloe, this is where he becomes a true monster. While everyone else was drowning in sorrow, the gambler Yeong-do's mind was somewhere else entirely. He was thinking, my luck was so good today, too bad the game got cut short. Can you believe that? His sister-in-law just died, and that's what he was thinking. That night, after the funeral, Yeong-do went right back to the gambling den, but his luck had run out and he lost all his money. As he was sitting there, broke, an absolutely chilling thought crossed his mind. Oh, right. In my sister-in-law's coffin, we put in burial money and her jade ring. He was actually planning to steal the money and valuables meant for her journey to the afterlife. He immediately grabbed a shovel and headed for his sister-in-law's fresh grave. In the cold night air, the only sounds were his own breathing and the sickening crunch of the dirt digging into the dirt. Finally, he pried open the coffin lid. Under the moonlight, the body of his sister-in-law lay peacefully in her white burial clothes. Forgetting any sense of guilt, he grabbed the burial money and reached for the jade ring on her finger. But her hands were stiff, and the ring wouldn't budge. At the very moment he was struggling to wrench the ring from her finger, the cold, dead body of his sister-in-law suddenly shot its eyes wide open, and then it slowly sat up and grabbed his arm. Yeong-do was so terrified he couldn't even scream. He was just frozen. A moment later, he snapped out of it and ran screaming like a madman back toward his house. But the scariest part was He could hear his sister-in-law's voice calling his name, Yeong-do! Yeong-do! Following right behind him. It turns out the sister-in-law hadn't actually died. The sticky rice cake had caused her to faint and fall into a state of suspended animation. But when that worthless brother-in-law was twisting her finger off to get the jade ring, the stimulation to her pressure points miraculously brought her back to consciousness. In the end, Gilja returned alive, and they say her gambler brother-in-law spent the rest of his life atoning for his sins, never able to look her in the eye. But isn't that a chilling coincidence, Chloe? Just think, if he hadn't gone to desecrate her grave that night out of pure greed, would she have just slept forever in that coffin?